podcast where we talk to smart people, but not necessarily done by smart people?
That is an awesome question.
This one goes down probably on one of my top 5.
Hey, I like nutrition. I like to eat food.
This is the coolest thing ever. We're going to do this forever.
I wish I paid more attention in that class.
You know, I'm going to be honest, I don't understand that. As a man, I don't get it.
Welcome to smartpeoplepodcast.com.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Glad to have you back. This is the Smart People Podcast. I am Chris Stemp.
And I'm John Rojas.
We're the two hosts. Hopefully you know that by now because you have been listening to every episode of season 2. So it's only been, this is the second one so far, but
Episode 2.
There's another 50 you should check out. They were as cool in terms of guests, but sound quality is definitely going up because today was a great day for John.
It was.
He got to, it was like Christmas came early. He geeked out and purchased, we got new mics, some new, what are these things called? Arms?
I guess boom arms, boom mic arms.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun. The studio is coming together. I think we're going to run out of money here soon, so ittle be half a studio. But
that's okay.
But it works. So thanks for joining us. You can check us out more at our website, which is www.smartpeoplepodcast.com. We write up a little bit about everyone we interview. We post the podcast there, as well as, obviously, you can get it at iTunes. And make sure when you go to iTunes, subscribe to us so you don't have to worry about checking in every week. And also leave us a little rating. 5 stars is the only rating we accept. So please make sure to click on that and then leave a little comment.
Yeah, and this week we're excited. We're talking to Dr. Charlie Pellerin. He is, or was, the director of astrophysics at NASA. Kind of a big deal, it sounds like.
The director of astrophysics.
How are you the director of astrophysics?
I got to tell you something right now. I had to Wikipedia astrophysics.
I don't blame you. I did that earlier today.
I mean, I know it's badass, but that's about all I know. So.
Yeah, but Charlie started off as a investigator at Goddard Space Flight Center. Then he transferred to NASA. 8 short years later, he was named the director of astrophysics. He dealt with a dozen scientific satellite launches. This included the Hubble telescope. Maybe you've heard of it.
Don't give away everything.
Pretty big deal.
We dive into the Hubble thing in the interview, and it's crazy. Like, you really want to hear what happened and what he had to say about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Charlie wrote a book called How NASA Builds Teams, Mission Critical Soft Skills for Scientists, Engineers, and Project Teams. You can find information on him at nasateambuilding.com. He gives everything away for free. I mean, except for the book, obviously, but there's tons of great information on his website. You can take tests. There's training modules, all kinds of stuff on how to build better teams. Charlie was awesome. We really enjoyed it. And Chris, I know space is one of your...
I like it.
One of your interests.
Well, I just like the fact that we don't know anything about it. So that's actually a good thing you mentioned it. For everybody about to listen to the interview, the first 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes, we just talk about space in general and the space program, putting people on Mars, private sector being the one that's doing all the space exploration now. And it's really cool because the director of NASA, basically, he knows everything, right? So we get a cool inside view there. Then the second half of the interview, we talk about his book and what it all means, how NASA builds teams. What does that mean? Why does he know? And basically, I'm not going to give it away, but he came up with all this because he screwed up in a huge way. And he's now giving it away. He's, like Roach said, aside from, the book's not free, but all the information, slides, everything, it's on his website. And Charlie was an awesome guy. He's just super nice. You can tell by his demeanor, and he has a lot of cool stories. So really hope you enjoy this. We're going to turn it over here to the interview in a second. Make sure to check us out on Facebook and or follow us on Twitter at SmartPeoplePod. We love hearing from you guys. You can email us, let us know what you think. Send us guests that you'd like to hear from. We've been, contacting people like crazy, and we have a silly lineup coming up. Good things happening with the podcast. Now, tune in your brain a little bit, learn something about space and management skills, team building. Here is Dr. Charles Pellerin. All right, Charlie, first, I do want to dive into your book. Obviously, that's the main thing we want to talk about. But I would be doing our listeners a disservice because we are the Smart People Podcast, and you were the you are the former director of astrophysics at NASA. Did I get that all right?
Yep, for 10 years.
Okay. And so in my mind, and I'm sure everybody else's, that puts you at the upper echelon of smart people. So first, I kind of just want to, pick your brain a little bit about space in general and just crazy stuff, things that you might know. So the first thing I wanted to ask you actually is about private funding that's now, going on rather than government funding for space exploration. I want to get your take on that. See if you think that that's a good thing, and if you think we're going to see better results in the private sector versus, more of the government going after it.
Well, look, I'm sure you're talking about SpaceX. That's the big
exactly
popular event.
Exactly.
The government bought that, actually. It was not, they may have had some of his money, I don't know how much, but we bought that from them. And I talk like I still work there. I guess I think I do kind of. And most people don't know, but since NASA was founded, 90% of our money's gone outside the agency on contracts always.
Okay.
So all the rockets in the past have been built by private companies. NASA's really a technical management organization. We don't build much. So what's different here is, I think, an attempt to gain more efficiency by not having the government oversight. And we'll have to see as time goes on how well this works. There's no doubt about it. You can do it cheaper. We'll have to see if it's like, I'm not sure I'd want to fly in an airplane with no FAA regulations, and I'm not sure the banking system benefited from too little regulation.
Very true.
But it's an interesting adventure, and I wish them all the well. NASA's also done a lot of work for them. By the way, I don't mean in any way to diminish what they do. I just want to get the record straight. I was at Ames Research Center last week, and they told me they designed and tested the heat shield for them. So this is not all that different from what we've done in the past, except there's not, to be fair to them, the government puts an awesome burden of paperwork on our contractors. So I'm guessing they could probably do this for, I'm going to throw a number out, 60, 70% of what we'd pay if we contracted under a cost-plus contract.
Okay.
And the end game here is really good. The end game is that they're going to go completely commercial. By the way, I was out speaking at a startup in San Jose that I think is really the real place we want to go commercially. It's a small company. It's about 50 people, mostly Stanford PhDs, about 25, 30 years old. And they're building imaging satellites with about a 1-foot mirror. And the deal is they think they can build a whole satellite for $5 million, which is incredible. And I think they probably can. And they're going to put like 20, it's called Skybox. They're going to put about 20 in orbit, get this, using Russian ICBMs. And they're going to go sell these images. And the competitive advantage they've got over, say, Google Earth or something is that they're going to get images of things every, 30 minutes or hour. So one of their markets, I just find this really fascinating. One of their markets is like, for example, Walmart can contract with them, and they can keep track of how many cars are in Walmart parking lots around the world almost in real time.
That's insanity.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and that's cool stuff. And SpaceX, if these early things work out, I believe they're going to be trying to find a way to do real commercial work under space tourism. I think the big reservation the NASA old-timers like me have is when you start to take the step that's really part of this, which is to put people in them, how are we going to be sure they're safe? And I think the problem some of the old-timers at the agency have with this is that some of us believe that if we have a failure, he's going to come back on NASA, even though the commercial company did it themselves. When when you take astronauts out, it's a national event. So I think it's an experiment worth doing. I don't quite get as someone the other day wrote an article said this is the most incredible thing since the Apollo program landed on the moon. No, I don't. I don't put it in that category. It's one more step in evolution of gradually moving NASA out. For example, the rockets. When my missions launched, commercial companies had built the rockets. I brought out my my safety and mission assurance people. when we went through everything to make sure that any changes they made since the last flight we properly accounted for, this kind of thing. But space has been largely commercial since it started. So.
Huh. So, you kind of mentioned it a little bit, talking about basically space tourism. Do you think that is our ultimate goal right now? And do you think that is, do you see that happening? John and I were talking about it a little bit beforehand. It seems difficult.
It's the 1/10 of 1% game. You can buy a ride to the space station from Russia today.
I'm in.
I mean, that exists. I think it's $20 million, and you can go get on their rocket and go to the space station and
no problem.
ride around, take pictures out the window, this kind of thing if you want.
Wow.
I think the people that are, I've heard Elon Musk talk about this, and there's a specific NASA advocate for this. If I hear them talk about what they think this is really about, they think this is an essential step to an ultimate populating of the solar system and maybe someday another planet around another star. That's kind of hard. The nearest star, I believe, is 20 light years away. But we got enough trouble making space to live on Earth right now. So,
right.
But that's the dream and the vision, and boy, I hope it works out.
I know, me too. It'd be awesome. And
I've actually advocated rather a different strategy for NASA, but I've not been able to get any traction with it. If you're interested, the agency's kind of lost right now, in my view. NASA's a vision agency. In fact, people like deGrasse Tyson argue that the greatest benefit NASA brings the country is motivating young people to study math and science. And every time I speak to young people, there's half a dozen of them think they're going to be an astronaut, so that I tell them to go study math and science, and they probably won't, but I think studying math and science is a good thing for them and all of us.
Oh, yeah.
But President Obama made a speech at Kennedy that was, as everything else today, broadly misinterpreted by partisans on both sides. And he talked about a human on Mars, and that ought to be the ultimate goal. But to say that that's what he's up to is making the same mistake George Bush did by putting together a moon program. John Kennedy, when he said we're going to land in 1969, I don't think he was thinking about how long it would take to build it. He was thinking about how long he expected to be president, because you've got to have somebody, that's there to keep pushing on this.
right.
So I've been trying to talk to agency top management, not talk to those people, I talked to the administrator and others, to announce that we're going to build the robotic infrastructure on the surface of Mars to visit it. And robotics satellites systems cost like somewhere 10 to 100th of a human flight system. And so I think, people got excited about a lawnmower. That's what I call those little rovers on Mars. What if we put a little building there, a little habitat that could maintain a climate inside that humans could live in? Then you built, we know, for example, that there's a whole lot of water on Mars. If we just dug a little bit deeper as a big ice sheet, so next thing you do, you put a little grinder and a little heater in there, and you put a little water fountain in this building, and then you find a way to store some rocket fuel, and then you start to build some kind of a launch platform to launch someone back, and you have a robotic thing land on there and demonstrate it can fly there and fly back automatically. This is all doable. And so, and back to the political point, if you wanted to do a robotic thing, and Obama believed he's going to be president for 2 terms, which I'm sure he probably, plans around that, even if he's not sure it's going to happen. He could have done something really important step along the way and said, sometime in the future, some president's going to decide it's time to do the human, not going to be me, but I will have put an essential piece of the infrastructure down. And so that, to me, preserves the vision. It's doable within the current budget, and that's what they ought to do, but I don't know.
Well, no, I mean, that's pretty awesome, because if anybody would have at least an idea, it would be you. So I'm going to, that's what we do, is we talk to the smart people and take their word for it.
Yeah, and Chris and I actually just had this conversation prior to calling you. I was talking to him about the video that's out on YouTube now explaining how they're going to land this new Mars rover on the planet.
Yeah.
And just how crazy this 7-minute landing period, like all the different things they had to do with the heat shield and then the parachute, the sky crane or whatever they're called. Yeah, so
all of us to look at that thing and go, what an idiotic idea.
Well,
but it's almost certainly going to work, because JPL's got first-rate scientists and engineers, and something that is obviously complex as that is going to get run to the ground.
Sure.
And they're going to analyze it. You know, the things that bite you are the things that you don't pay attention to. The Hubble mirror flaw, in my case, was nobody ever imagined the mirror could have been misshapen, so nobody double checked it.
Well, why don't we use that as a jumping off point into your book, How NASA Builds Teams, Mission Critical Soft Skills for Scientists, Engineers, and Project Teams. Can you explain a little bit about what you mentioned with the mirror in the Hubble and what had to be done, what your position was throughout all this, and just what resulted from it?
Yeah, well, I was in my 8th year, and I was the leader of the Hubble development team, and went down to the Cape, and it was kind of a worrisome launch. In fact, usually I would spend my time when I went down to launches with small missions. I'd go hobnob with the senators and congressmen, because that was getting my budget for next year going. But in this case, I was in the blockhouse with a headset on because NASA needed someone to decide what we would do if the launch wasn't right. And the shuttle main engines have always been the scary part. In fact, that's another case of misguided attention. The main engines worried everybody much more than the boosters. So if we lost the main engine, there were 3 of them on the shuttle during launch, I was going to have to decide whether to take the telescope back to the emergency landing site in Dakar, where it would certainly be completely contaminated and ruined in probably 3 or 4 years of disassembling it, cleaning it, and reassembling it.
Wow.
Or leave it in a low Earth orbit and hope you could get a shuttle up in time to reboost it. So that was my job during that thing. And the launch phase worked perfectly, or in NASA jargon, nominally. And then we had the early deployment, and we couldn't get the solar arrays out. A really scary moment, but they finally deployed, and everything worked, and the telescope came to life, and we gave permission for the shuttle to release it into orbit, and the shuttle came back. So 2 or 3 months later, I go for the viewing of the first light, and my boss had agreed against my advice that we would make this public event. So I went out to Goddard to Operations Center and stood there with the news media around the world and opened the door, and there came this image on the thing of some stars, and everybody cheered. So I went to the chief system engineer for Hubble, who was standing next to me, and I said, Gene, I said, those images are blurry. He said, don't worry about that, Charlie. He said, when we put the position in the secondary mirror, we put it a few microns out further than we thought it would be. So if we were out of focus, we have to drive the stepper motor 1 step at a time straight in until we got it in the right place instead of having to hunt back and forth. That's how conservative the program was. So I thought, fine. So I went to Japan for a little week of R&R and working with my Japanese counterparts. I had a number of agreements with them. Came back to the U.S., a true story, landed in St. Louis Red Carpet Lounge, and I had been out of touch with headquarters for a week, so I called my office, and my secretary says, have you talked to Lynn Fisk lately, my boss? I said, no. She said, I'll put you right through. Now, how often do you get put right through to a senior executive?
To anybody's boss, yeah.
This doesn't happen.
Yeah.
The standard answer is he's in a meeting, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So he says to me, he says, where are you? I said, I'm in the Red Carpet Lounge in St. Louis. He said, when will you be in the office? I said, tomorrow morning. He says, I'm glad to hear that. And I said, why? And he said, let me ask you a question first. What do you know about spherical aberration? And I said, well, what I know is when an amateur builds a mirror inappropriately, with too casually, you get what's called a downturned edge. And I'm not sure you can visualize this so easily, but as you go out on the radius of the mirror, the light focuses at a different point on the optical axis, and it can never focus. It's impossible to focus. And he says to me, well, I'm glad you knew that. And I said, why, Lynn? He said, because you launched Hubble Space Telescope with a spherically aberrated mirror.
Oh, no.
Said, yeah, and this is the conversation with 2 PhDs. I said, did not. He says, did so. Did not, did so. Did not, did so. I mean, between us, we've got 10 degrees, I think. So,
right.
So he says to me, wherever you are, put down the phone, but don't hang up, and come back with the front page of any national newspaper.
No.
Yeah, so I go around the lounge and find the St. Louis Times-Dispatch, I think it was, And I come back to the phone, and he says, read it to me, what it says above the fold. And it's big black letters said, National Disaster, Hubble launched with flawed mirror.
Oh, wow.
And he says, now what do you say? Honest to God truth. I said, Lynn, how did you guys sneak a fake newspaper into the very lounge I landed in? You guys are really clever. So life was never the same for me after that. I was responsible for arguably the biggest screw-up in the history of science.
And, you know, I mean, I want to get into that, and I know how that shaped a lot of what, you know, the book's about and everything, but at that moment, when you think back, I mean, I think I have problems when I make a small mistake at work. I'd probably pass out, honestly. Like, how did you handle that? How did you deal with that? What was the response?
Well, you know, later I named this, I'm sure you've heard this little joke expression, denial's not a river in Egypt.
Yes.
I don't think I grasped it. It was too incredible.
Right.
And, it didn't sink in. And at that time, we had no idea what might have caused it.
Wow.
So I was made a member of the Failure Review Board, and it took months to figure out what happened. And some guy, an optical expert on there, did a calculation that said, you know, if this thing called a null corrector, which is what you use to figure these mirrors, if the guy had misspaced it by a millimeter, we'd get the effect we've seen. Now, missing a millimeter in an optical shop is like a mile. I mean, even your dentist, which just does things, you know, with his hands and no instruments to speak of, if he made a 1 millimeter error, a millimeter is the end of a lead pencil. I mean, if they made an error in your tooth that big, you couldn't use it.
Oh,
so
yeah.
This was an incredible, giant error. It turned out it was true, and we went and looked at what happened, and the chairman of the Failure Review Board, Lou Allen, the director of the Jet Propulsion Lab at the time, we found, they went down and interviewed the guy who had retired in Florida, found out how he'd made the error. The mistake he'd made was a stupid thing, and I thought to myself, well, thank God, it's not a management problem. So, you know, it hadn't sunk into me even after months that maybe somehow I was culpable.
Right.
But then Lou looked deeper, and this is the characteristic of every failure that someone looks more deeply at. He brought the board back again, and I was annoyed. I'm really tired of the little motel in Danbury, Connecticut, and plus I've got a program to run back home. And he said, I want to find out why the smart guys at PerkinElmer never ran down a thing that had hints of a problem over and over and over. We found that there were all these tests that had hints of an error. And so he looked into it, and he said, I've concluded that NASA management had them under such intense, extreme pressure and duress and criticism that they didn't spend any time working on problems that they didn't believe were real. And see, the equivalent of the sky crane is the pointing system for Hubble. Hubble's a small mirror by astronomical standards. It's only 96 inches, 2.4 meters. And so to do its thing, it's got to point with extreme stability. You know, if you go out at night and look at a star in the sky and it's blinking, the star is not changing. The light is switching on and off of your retina because of unevenness in the Earth's atmosphere. So the requirement, get this, was 7 thousandths of an arc second indefinitely. Now, you don't think in thousandths of an arc second, that's the angle a human hair makes at a mile.
Wow.
The body action of the telescope had to point with that stability.
Wow.
Or the thing was a waste. And the problem was there's no test on Earth that could verify this. You know, we don't like to fly anything without a test. In fact, I think we spend as much money testing stuff as we do building it. And so all you could do is test all the parts, put them together analytically with a big software program, and predict it's probably going to work. So what happened was the program was overrunning all the time, and people were getting fired. In fact, I got the job I got because they fired my boss for the previous Hubble overrun. And so and there's a tendency in human nature to blame other people when you screw up, and that's what we were doing. So then Lou Allen asked another question. He said, I want to know why the smart people in the science working group at NASA for the telescope who knew about spherical aberration, they were ground-based astronomers, why they didn't insist on running down these hints of a problem. And he learned then that PerkinElmer never told us about any of these anomalies. So when he went to the Congress to explain how he spent 15 years and $2 billion, which would inflate to about 7 today, and built a telescope that was useless.
Didn't work.
he said it was a leadership failure.
Yeah.
And I was leader of the team.
Wow.
And believe it or not, that didn't dawn on me because I and everyone else, technical people, are so habituated to find the technical cause and name that as the problem.
Right. No, and that would be my first. That would be my first thing. I didn't make the error. I didn't cut the thing. But
that's right.
But when
when
you mention it, it makes sense.
The mirror was fabricated 4 years before I got there. But all these errors were found over and over and over and over. The mirror had half a wave of error, and they rationalized it away every time. One of the big ones was they did a calculation that was completely wrong. When we took the mirror off of its bed of nails and put it in the flight mount, which is a 3-point mount in gravity, that it would deform by half a wave. It's nonsense. So, so believe it or not, I covertly started the mission that ultimately repaired the telescope. I got promoted to the top of NASA, and isn't it a wonderful thing that you can break something and then get promoted when you fix it?
Yeah, I love it. I wish my job was like that. I'd break everything in there. Well, hey, I mean, it ended up working out. And then I guess, could you talk a little bit about how that experience then, what it taught you in terms of now in your book, how NASA builds teams, you use that experience, and I think it'll dawn on a lot of managers and things like that on these same mistakes can be taken into many organizations.
Exactly. It turns out that social context, what I call social context now, drives performance and risk overwhelmingly. There's a great story about this in the book about Korean Airlines. It was crashing at 17 times the international norm, and it went on for years. No one knew what to do, and the reason is this very common error we make of believing its individual abilities count, and that's why we spend all these years in graduate schools, rather than team social context. And they kept testing the Korean Airlines pilots, and they all were tested fine. I mean, you test pilots in ways you can't test many other things. You put them in, simulators, and they land a 747 on a icy runway with 2 engines out in the fog, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And finally, after years of this, somebody put an observer in the cockpit and watched what happened, and what he saw was the Koreans had imported Confucian social context into the cockpit of their airplanes. So when the captain was flying and made mistakes, the first officer couldn't say anything, and it got to be embarrassing. So they just opened up and read a newspaper while the plane's flying along.
Yeah, you know what's really funny about that, actually? My dad's a pilot, and he's told me that. And he said when he was the first officer, not the captain, he heard this, and they're all aware of it now, and they speak their mind. I mean, it's no longer like that.
Yep.
If they see a problem, that you have to tell them. It's actually in the law or rules or whatever.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. I fly about 100,000 miles a year, so I'm up in the cockpits of these, these big jumbo jets. You get on early when you've got the status I've got. I go up in the cockpit and talk to the guys, and it's always, "Hey, Charlie, come on in. I'm Fred. I'm Jack."
That's awesome.
And sometimes they say, "Would you like to start the APU? Would you like to?" There's none of this stuff you hear on the speakers when they're saying, "Put your seatbelt on. This is the captain."
Right.
And I asked them, I said, "You feel free to criticize each other." "Oh, we're required to."
Yeah, exactly. So, and when you
So-
talk about social context, you're talking about, for the listeners that aren't aware, the way the team or the way at least a few individuals on this team interact with each other and how that changes the whole, correct?
Exactly. So what I'm interested in is the team's behavioral norms, their collective behaviors towards each other. And we have very short instruments that take 15 minutes and measure this. Then I benchmark it against hundreds of other teams. We've done this for 1,500 teams now, technical mostly. And I can tell them what their performance is, how efficiently they're working, and what their risk posture is. And this is what my book's basically about. I consider discovering this the greatest thing I've ever done in my life, more important than Hubble. Lots of people could have managed Hubble, but no one's been as fortunate to stumble into something that I think is as profound as this that I'm aware of.
I actually work for a consulting firm in Washington, D.C., and I complain about this to Chris all the time with just the team dynamics and kind of the way that, you still have that top-down structure where your analysts, consultants really don't bring up their ideas or concerns or any of that kind of stuff to the managers. So especially in my line of work, I mean, besides the obvious of speak up, what kind of recommendations do you give teams that work in project management and that kind of stuff? I mean, without giving away too much. And
Oh no, there's no, everything's out there on my website. Everything's free. All of our workshops, workshop slides, processes, instruction manuals, everything's free.
Oh, and that's great. And the website, by the way, is the number 4-dsystems.com.
Actually, there's an easier way to get to it. If you go to nasateambuilding.com.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Okay.
It'll
Awesome.
get you to it.
Okay. Just
So
wondering.
everything's free. When I wrote the book, I decided all this intellectual property that we used to guard so carefully, I decided to make it all free. And there's we have a dashboard that you can get and go measure these team contexts with it. And there's 110 of them operating around the world. And there are people as disparate as the largest nuclear utility in the world, Electricité de France, has our processes running in 3 of their factories. And someone the other day told me that I had a slide with a 200,000-person Chinese shoe factory using them. He says, "No, I'm using them in a 1,000,000-person Chinese company."
Oh,
Wow.
So it's a really interesting system, and I'm on a mission to try and, not that I care to make any money on this. I like my wife likes money, but it's not about a money making thing. To try and help the world through what I think is going to be a difficult period coming up. And the only thing I can see to get us out of most of our troubles is enhanced technical team performance. So that's what I'm up to.
I was actually just going to ask you what actually drove you to the decision to release this stuff for free. Because like you said, so many people guard their intellectual property really close to their hearts. But what you just said, I mean, that's really impressive. And I'm kind of the same way, where I think that people just need to create things and put them out for free. And the world would just, benefit from the stuff, because
That's it.
way too many people are looking to make that quick buck or whatever it may be. That's awesome. And hopefully, a bunch of our listeners will go to the website, get that stuff for free, read the book, all that kind of stuff.
That'd be cool. By the way, the book's got 45 5-star Amazon reviews.
I saw, we were just looking at it, and I was like, man, this thing, I mean, everybody loves it, and it's great. What, to give a little teaser and everything, and I'm on a sales team, John's on a project management team. I think everybody works, or most people work in a team environment. Could you give us a quick couple of things that you've learned that just work well, or just some tips or advice or anything?
Yeah. If I tell you one thing, I would say understand that the deepest need other people have of you, once your physiological needs are met, air, food, water, warmth, that kind of thing, and once you feel safe, is feeling appreciated. And so if you could do one thing differently, is to start habitually appreciating people around you. People all need it and all crave it. And if I had known what I know today when I was managing Hubble, and I could do one thing then, I would have given the PerkinElmer guys more appreciation than criticism, and it would have opened things up, and someone would have told me, I believe, about these anomalous tests. And if I knew about them, we would have run them down.
Wow.
So if I go to a team that's broken and they say, just tell me one thing to do, I have a module on this. You can go download the slides to teach this module on my website too. Teach them how to do this. And we do, with teams that we do workshops for, I do an experiential exercise where we go through the room and participants, see, what's interesting about appreciation is the thing that people worry about is, how do I make it authentic? So the way you make it authentic, this is how all our processes work. The crucial thing is your attitude or mindset. And so we first teach people how to live in the mindset of gratitude. And, of course, mindset's a choice, and all it means is focusing on what you're grateful for instead of what's annoying you. Once you do that, the appreciation experience will come automatically, and you will feel the appreciation, and then you'll express it, and it will be authentic because it is. So to begin to express authentic appreciation, I hope I'm not rambling too much here.
No,
But
I love that. I really do. I'm thinking about in my own thing, because I do. I mean, everybody runs into stuff that annoys them, and for some reason, that sticks with me much longer than the quick wins. And I end up the whole day just becomes about these annoyances rather than if I look at the good things that happen and
Exactly.
then who helped me get there. It'd be I don't know. So no, you're not rambling at all. I really appreciate that.
So a friend of mine is an FBI agent. He went up to the World Trade Center right after 9/11, and he came back. I said, "What'd you learn?" Here's what he told me. Many words were spoken into the ears of the dead that they yearned to have heard while they were alive.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, big stuff.
that is.
So tonight after we hang up, go appreciate somebody in your life, if they're physically with you, and tell them what you value about them and that you care about them, and watch what happens.
I love that, and I know we need to be wrapping it up, and I think that's a good place to end it. Just because, like I said, you're director of NASA. You've done the one of the with the Hubble, one of the biggest things we've done in science, and all these things. And then you wrote this book, How NASA Builds Teams, and it can be used by managers and companies worldwide. And in the end, the message is something that, I mean, we talk about a lot on this in terms of just, connection and everything. It's really, appreciate people, do right by others, things like that. And it's amazing what will come out of it in your personal life and
Exactly.
at work. So that's really incredible. That is incredible information. So again, thank you so much for being on the show. This is awesome stuff. The book, How NASA Builds Teams, is incredible. 45, of the ratings on Amazon, all 5 stars. Really great. And I saw you're on Twitter. If you want to tell our listeners, your Twitter handle, and again, mention your website and just let them know how to find you.
Yes, in fact, let me think what my Twitter handle is.
No, that's all right. If you don't use it too much, I just saw you're on there. So
no, I don't use it too much.
Okay.
I got a lot of followers, but I don't like to jam it up with a whole bunch of stuff. What I use it for, just if you're curious. Let me see if I can find here. But what I use it for is every time I upload I'm just starting this. Every time I upload new information on the website, I put a Twitter out that there's a new workshop slide or something like that. I'm Charlie Pellerin at NASA _team build.
great, awesome. Okay, and then I know the website there's 2. You said 4-dsystems.com, and the other one, what was the other one?
It's just www.nasateambuilding, all one word, .com.
Perfect. All right. Well, again, thank you so much, and really enjoy what you're doing with this book, and best of luck on that.
Anything I can do for you?
No, I mean, just being on the show is everything we asked for. And what we'll do is this episode will probably come out in about a week or 2, and we'll let you know. If you want to send that tweet out and let everybody know they can listen to you, that always helps.
And Charlie, I had a quick question. I know you're a busy guy and all that kind of stuff, but have you ever thought about using the, theme in this book for any other books? Like, do you plan on writing anything else using this same concept?
No, I don't. By the way, the book's pretty universal. If I may, I discovered this amazing effect that these assessments that take 15 minutes boost team performance for most teams 5% every time you do it, which is like a 5% budget increase.
Right.
Yeah. I stopped and started to write this book. At that moment, I said, "This is such an incredible discovery. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the world."
That's awesome.
And I got a. People told me, you're a first-time author. You're not going to be able to find an agent. I got an agent in an hour in New York City, A-level agent. She got Wiley to publish the book. And when I did this, Wiley said to me, "You need to write this book and focus it on technical minds, because if you want to go into the whole self-help market, there's a bazillion out there, and nobody on the planet speaks as clearly to technically educated people as you do."
Right.
So that's why I wrote it the way I did. And I've talked to them about writing a more general book, and what they've come back with is I don't have the platform for it. So, but what I am doing, I've got the equivalent of another book called The Fifth Force, and it's also free on my website. So you can go read that.
You're just giving it all away. Well, we'll take it. I know our listeners will too. So, again, thanks so much. And I'm really glad you're doing all this. We appreciate it. And best of luck.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you both.
All right, Charlie.
Have a good evening.
You too.
You do the same.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the interview with Charlie Pellerin. Hope you realize that even though you make a $2 to $3 billion mistake, there's still opportunity to do good things, to do great things. We've learned that talking to Charlie. He's put all kinds of stuff out there. He just wants the world to be a better place now. So hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean,
take what you can.
Go appreciate somebody at your job.
Yes.
And when you think about it, if your boss came over to you and just seriously sat down and said, look, you've been working hard. You've been doing well for the company. Honestly, I see it. Just want to say thanks. Wouldn't you be like, okay, first of all, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
And second of all, you'd work a little harder. It's like a free boost, if he actually meant it. So it's crazy hearing somebody like Dr. Pellerin. That's his main piece of advice, and really enjoyed it. Hope you guys did too. Just to wrap it all up, make sure to tune in, subscribe to us on iTunes, and if you want to buy anything off Amazon, make sure you use our link, which is at smartpeoplepodcast.com. It's how we got these new mics, and we're shooting for a new soundboard eventually. Maybe we'll get that in 2013.
Yeah, follow us on Twitter, Smart People Pod. If you want to give Stemp a call on his cell phone, go ahead and do that too.
It's 911.
No. Just kidding.
All right, make sure to tune in. We're doing this again on a weekly basis. We're back in action. Season 2, Smart People Podcast. Thanks for listening.
Have a good morning, afternoon, or night. I love how podcasts are not time sensitive. Goodbye.